Welcome to FinOps X, introducing Executive Director of FinOps Foundation, J.R. Storment.
Wow. Wow. Good morning, San Diego. So good to see you all. And especially glad all of you who actually made it in. My shout out to the people on the live stream who did not make it here due to all the travel issues. We will miss you very much, but thank you to all of you. There are people here from all over the world. So who's here from Europe? Yeah, oh, a lot of you, all right. India? Oh, couple, okay. South America? Nice, excellent, excellent. The UK? Excellent. ANZ? All right, excellent. So we are sold out this year. We had to turn away 200 people to come to this conference. It's going to be bigger and better next year, of course. And we are so excited because last year we put this together in 10 weeks. We had a couple hundred people who came to the inaugural FinOps X in Austin, Texas. Was anybody at that event? Oh, wow, a lot of you. Awesome, great. So welcome home. This year, despite all the travel restrictions people had, 1,200 registrations for this event. This is officially the biggest gathering of FinOps people that has ever happened. And we got 100, oh yes, thank you. I like all the claps, all right. Cool. We've got you're gonna mess up my timer, I'm gonna run out of time here. We've got 110 sessions going on the agenda, over 150 different speakers across the whole spectrum range of maturity and content. We got 100-level content if you're just getting started. We also leaned heavily into more 300-level content this year from some amazing brands. And I am gonna look down at the notes and read this list because it's crazy. We've got Walmart, JP Morgan Chase, Apple, Disney, Fidelity, JP Morgan Chase, Target, Capital One, Here Technologies, Salesforce, SAP, Coke, Equifax, American Airlines, Adobe, Nationwide, Fidelity, and dozens more. The content is really staggering. And this conference is not about advancing any particular technology or cloud or anything else. The conference is about advancing you as individuals. We're here to learn and to connect. So we're gonna start with some connecting. Pull out your phones, please, and open up your camera app. You don't need the LinkedIn app, just the camera app. And you'll see on the back of your badges, on the orange side, there's a QR code. This is my QR code. Each of yours have it. If you touch that and open it up, it'll pull up my LinkedIn profile, and you can connect with me there. I'm gonna spend the rest of the day accepting invitations. Use this out there. Find the people here who you wanna talk to, connect with them. Okay, put your phones away, enough screen time, we're gonna move forward. So, apologies to the folks on the live stream and also to the introverts in the audience for what I'm about to do, but we're gonna put up a 30-second timer on the sides, and you're gonna start connecting right now. So, I'm gonna ask you if it's comfortable for you to stand up. Go ahead. And when I say go, you have 30 seconds. I did this last year, I got way out of hand, so we're actually putting a timer up. 30 seconds. You're gonna introduce yourself to 3 people. You don't have time to scan their badges. 3 people, tell them where you're from, go. Chris, come here, man.
How you feeling, dude?
Good.
From Iowa.
Hey man, thanks for coming. Yeah, really good. Hey.
I don't know whether you know, but I think you were in a Sainsbury in the UK.
Yes. Oh yes. Okay. Time is up. Time is up. Time is up. Time is up. Bring it back. FinOps. Okay, you got your 3 people. Time's up. Here we go, folks. We got a big show for you. We got to bring it back. Wow. Great job. And especially kudos to the 3 people who came up here and introduced themselves to me. I actually got a hug, you missed it. It was great. My new friend Chris, who lives here in San Diego as well. I just moved to La Jolla this last week. I'm here now, so please come visit me. So that's what this whole thing is about. It's about making connections, okay? And I want you to remember this. Everybody's here for the same thing. It's a little bit scary sometimes at conferences to walk up and have that conversation. For me personally, some of the most, I'd say, impactful and long-lasting professional connections I have were forged at conferences like this. So please make those connections. In fact, the first version of the Cloud FinOps book We agreed the deal, Mike Fuller and I, with the publisher in the back room of a bar in Vegas at the Venetian at a certain conference after Thanksgiving in 2018. So, when we wrote that first version of the manuscript, there were only 26 people in the FinOps Foundation community. A few of you are here today. Who are some of the OG folks, original folks, the 26? See a couple of you out there, Anders, Steph. Yes, awesome. So when we wrote that first book, there really was a lot more aspiration than reality, I think. We didn't have enough stories to go on. Now, today, fast forward 4 years, we've got 11,000 people in the community in 111 countries. And so the new version of the book has a lot of stories. We actually had to stop ourselves at 450 pages because it was getting too long. But Mike and I and the FinOps Foundation staff are not the creators of FinOps. You all are. You're the ones out there in your companies, you're in our summits, you're in the Slack, you're in trainings, you're out there in the hallways and out there in your conference rooms, setting and defining the best practices. We're going to hear a little bit from me and some of our speakers and a lot in the breakouts about FinOps is still evolving. Every year things get different and better. Now, in the early days of the foundation, we started with a really simple concept. What if we created a vendor-neutral, cloud-neutral place where you could all come together and share your stories and learn from each other? And what if, crazy concept, what if we made it about all of you instead of advancing a particular technology? That is what this space is for, and that is what the FinOps Foundation is. So myself and my staff, there's about 25 of us here. Can you put your hands up? Anybody in the staff? Oh, get back to work. What are you doing here? No. They all have gold lanyards on. Look for them. Ask them for help. They have been busting their butts for months. This is the biggest project we have done, and thank you to the staff for all the work. So we work for the yes, thank you. We work for the Linux Foundation, and we're a program of that is focused as a mission on advancing, not surprisingly, the people who do the practice of managing the value of cloud wherever you are. So 3 core areas we're going to talk about and you're going to see this week. First is community. Last night, the welcome reception, I hope for those of you who got in late, you didn't miss it, but seeing people connect and talk, bringing it together, making stories and connections wherever you are. The second is education. Certification, training, helping you to grow in your career wherever you are in that journey. And the third, open source best practices. So we're going to hear a lot about how we're creating an open source repository, and you're all feeding into it to help you jumpstart your practice wherever you are in that journey. All right, so mission, blah, blah, blah. What does that look like in real life? I'm so happy, chuffed for my British friends, to tell the story of Samar, who is here today. Samar started about 5 years ago in tech, and he had an internship job at a tech company in India. He's sitting right down here. I'm going to make him really uncomfortable. Samar shared that 5 years ago, he was making $100 a month in India, and he decided he wanted to do something bigger and go further. And so he decided to pursue cloud. He got interested in FinOps. He got into the MBA program at Cornell University in NYC, moved to New York. And his friend over here, Dear Mason, longtime FinOps guy from Roku, Google, Intuit, and Netflix, I think I got that right, no notes, boom, told him about the FinOps Foundation. And Samar started coming to our events. We gave him a scholarship to come to Austin. He was there, met him there. He came to our roadshows in DC and New York City. And while at Cornell, Samar worked on a working group about sustainability in FinOps. And he presented on our March summit and shared not only their learnings, but he also shared that he was looking for a job. Samar started scouring the jobs board for months. He got a lot of interviews. Both Dieter and also Mike Rosenberg, are you out here? Mike Rosenberg, former AWS, the new bank. He also helped Samar with getting ready for questions. Super cool to announce. Samar arrived back from India in California yesterday. He has a brand new job at Blue Cross Blue Shield as a senior FinOps engineer, earning 6 figures a year, and he's starting that this next month. Samar, you are like an inspiration. He sent me a photo this morning I just saw of him meditating, getting ready for this, and I looked at it and I was like, I love this man. So go find Samar, connect with him. He's an inspiration to this community, hardworking, and his smile will make you want to smile back at him. I'll see you soon, man. Okay, so I don't know if you can relate, But when I'm out there in the real world, I have a hard time explaining to people what it is I do and what FinOps is, and working for nonprofit makes it extra hard. But that's what this is about. Welcome home. You're with your people. You can turn to anybody here. You can talk about FinOps and not explain what it is, but talk about how to get better at it. How many of you see FinOps as your career path? Nice, okay. So in the last State of FinOps survey, we had about 90% of the recipients say it was their likely career path. They're looking at going that way. I'm blown away and humbled by how this community has progressed. So globally now, as I mentioned, we're in 111 countries, FinOps practitioners, but most notably, this stat blows my mind. 9 of the Fortune 10 have participated actively in the FinOps Foundation programs in the last 2 years. 2 weeks ago, this number was 45. It's now 48 of the Fortune 50 have participated in the FinOps Foundation programs. And as an aside, anyone would guess who the 10th one is? Okay, I'll give you a hint. The founder famously said, price is what you pay, quality is what you get. Sorry, value is what you get. Anybody? Oh man, you gotta read more about the Oracle from Omaha, come on. All right, we'll welcome him at some point. So, you're sitting here in a room with 500 other companies, and in attendance, we actually have 30 of the Fortune 50 here today. Big mix of large companies and some smaller ones, but all with large public and private cloud estates, and all at a time when travel restrictions are at an all-time high. So there are also dozens of government organizations here, I'm sorry, about 10 here, but dozens in the foundation. We got the Marines out here, I met them last night. Yes, we got the US Postal Service, we got the Army. I thought more excitement. Space Force is here. That's cool. And a bunch of the Canadian government. I'm sorry I didn't get all your logos. Oh, yes! I met like 6 of you last night. It was like a row of Canadian government people. All right, so together, you're all working together to essentially help define a future where we can all get more value out of cloud together. And that's the cool thing about my job. At the FinOps Foundation, I have this front row seat to see all this cool innovation, and that's what we're bringing to you this week. It all started with the virtual summits. A lot of you have been on, who's been on the virtual summits? The FinOps, yeah, a few of those? So these are 2-hour, they're not webinars, they're open Zooms. We get about 1,000 people concurrently at a time who come and share their best practices. Last year, we added in-person events. This is Austin last year. In the last 6 months, we've done in-person roadshows in London, Sydney, New York, Chicago, Stockholm. We're adding a bunch more this year. Please go to the community booth out here if you want to find out more about how to get involved with those. The second big pillar we focus on is education. And there was a really interesting challenge that emerged a couple years ago. This was a big switch in the market. Suddenly, I would say 2020, 2021, there were more FinOps jobs than there were FinOps practitioners out there. And we realized we needed to help upskill the talent, help give us certification. So we created the FinOps Certified Practitioner. How many of you are certified? Woo! That's cool. I remember coming to these things a few years back and being like, who knows about FinOps? And people, now you're all certified. Amazing. So we have trained over 13,000 people through our programs in the last few years and certified 6,500 of you through the formal process. There are additional certifications you're going to hear about tomorrow that are also about to land. And last year, we heard the demand for more specialized, deeper programs. And so we added the FinOps Certified Professional Program. This is a 2 to 3 month long course that you can't just test out of. It involves contribution work, it involves study, it involves working with your peers and cohorts. How many people out here are FinOps certified professionals? Ooh, that's an exclusive group. Way to go, folks. So the way you can think about the difference is, the FinOps practitioner is if you want to hire someone to work on your FinOps team. The FinOps Certified Professional Group are those who are designing and building FinOps practices at your organization. We know that education's not cheap. Certification, quality programs, they cost money, and we recognize that not everyone can afford them. So last year at X, we instituted a scholarship program. This year, we've already, in the last 6 months, given away $350,000 of scholarships. This has been really impactful in places like Brazil and in India, where wages make the certification harder to achieve. We also, this last year, under the guidance of Stacy Case, our VP of Professional Development. Are you out there, Stacy? Somewhere? Woo, there she is. You'll see her tomorrow up here. We have a bunch of programs aimed at professional development, mentoring programs, our diversity and equity inclusion SIG, our women in FinOps, all these programs aimed at driving more diverse workforce into FinOps, and also getting more students in here at earlier stages in their career, trying to drive as well into university programs over time. We also launched jobs.finops.org, which I think, Samar, did you find your job on there? Yes, he did. Check this out. There are hundreds of jobs on this now. Whether you're hiring or looking or not really looking, but kind of, curious what's out there, it's available for you. The third area that we're going to spend a lot of time on at this conference and today is open source best practices. The FinOps framework has been rolling out since 2020 in various phases. It is now the de facto standard for setting up a FinOps practice. And if you look on all the major cloud provider websites, all 5 of the top 5, they all reference it in different areas. This has become something that the life cycle, the capabilities, the domains are helping people to understand how to get started in their practice, but it's really still evolving. And this community is leaning in still on changing this every day. So at any given time right now, and this is a great way for you all who want to get more engaged, there are a dozen working groups running in the foundation focused on capability areas, intersections with other frameworks that are related, ways that you can help, all the way from adopting FinOps, which is the earlier stage, get your executives aligned, figure out how to get going, to unit economics, the great white whale of FinOps, to actually attach business value to your work. So if you want to, who's been involved in a working group, by the way? Excellent, cool. If you want to get into another one, there are 3 pillars out here for community, the framework, and education. Stop by the framework pillar to find out which one you might want to do or propose one to us. So the FinOps framework itself and everything on FinOps.org is vetted by our Technical Advisory Council. We call them the TAC for short. They are designed to be a group of practitioners, clouds, consultants, all coming together to vet and approve the standards and best practices before they are pulled into the FinOps canon. Want to give a big shout out to Riley Jenkins. Are you here? Riley? There he is. Riley's in from Utah. Riley has been our TAC chairperson for the last year. Thank you for all the efforts. Very excited to announce that Kim Weir from Target is stepping into the TAC chair role as of this next meeting. Thank you, Kim, for your efforts and coming in. And Riley is going to be focusing on open source data projects we're going to hear about. Also really cool, we have 5 new TAC members, and I see a couple of them up here in the front. We got Allie Whitman from Disney, we got David Lambert from Adobe, Michael Flanagan from Microsoft, Laura Zachmary, I'm pretty sure I got that right, Laura, from the GSA representing government, taking over from Melvin Brown, who's moving into the governing board, and Tracy Rossler from Verticent. The great thing about this group, besides their smiling faces and brands, is that they've all been in this for years. Folks like Allie have been at 3 or 4 companies, same as David and Michael, in this space. So huge experience in here. So thank you all for joining this. They all have a breakout session or chalk talk, so please be sure to check them out in the sessions. Our governing board is who I work for. This is the group that defines where the foundation invests its funds in terms of membership dollars and scholarship funds. This year, we welcomed a bunch of organizations, Apple, Fidelity, Equifax, Here Technologies, AIA, JP Morgan Chase, to our formal membership program. And we're adding a general tier of membership for organizations who want to focus in on training their teams. And so while we consider FinOps a business discipline, not a technology discipline, we also know there's a bunch of vendor partners who support this space. We have over 100 member organizations, clouds, consultancies, platforms who help provide and augment the FinOps capabilities. So I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our platinum sponsors, first and foremost. These 3 companies in particular, Google Cloud, Microsoft, and Deloitte, are leaning in heavily to the FinOps practice. Thank you for making this possible. Tomorrow, intermixed with Mike Fuller's keynotes, you're going to see live demos of them with some features happening, as well as hear from Adobe, Kim Weir from Target, US government, and they all have morning 8 a.m. breakout sessions, user groups, before the keynotes. Tomorrow keynotes start at 9, these start at 8. Check this out. Big thank you to our gold and silver sponsors as well. We're going to try something really cool tomorrow. At the end of the keynotes, we're going to do live Shark Tank style rapid fire demos on this stage. They're going to be circling through. You should yell, cheer, throw tomatoes, whatever you feel like, but please support them. They're all really excited to share what they've got coming up. At lunch, we're going to have the dine-in demo, which is the silver sponsors in here. You can eat and watch this happen. And please be sure to check out their expo halls in the booth. Expo booths in the hall, strike that, reverse it, good. And most of all, thank you to our scholarship sponsors. These folks gave money, not for a bigger booth, but to get dozens of more people to this conference. So let's give them a particular round of applause for that. and to our internet sponsor as well. Whew, okay. Ready to hear from some practitioners? People who actually do this? All right, Dieter's nodding. Great. So, as you all know, FinOps is not necessarily about saving money. It's about making money. But really, it's about preparing your organizations for the growth in cloud as you lean into cloud to drive more business value, drive more revenue, all those great things. So we're going to be hearing a lot of stories this week from companies who are taking the efficiency gains in FinOps and investing it into more talent, more innovation. We're going to hear from Adobe tomorrow, whole new products as a result of FinOps. But one of the most visible people in the FinOps Foundation virtual summits the last few years, she had an amazing background on her Zoom, this big tiger, was Natalie Daley, who's on our governing board and has been a longtime practitioner at HSBC. They run a run stage practice, which very coolly integrates sustainability and a reduction of carbon into their firm-wide FinOps practice. We're going to hear from Natalie about how FinOps doesn't really get easier over time. It gets more complex, and the gains get larger and larger. Please welcome to the stage Natalie Daley from HSBC. Take a leg.
Thank you, JR. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Wow, you look amazing, amazing. Welcome to FinOps X. Thank you, JR, for that excellent introduction. So I'll be talking to you today about HSBC's journey. We've been on the FinOps journey for about 4 years now. And as JR clearly said, it doesn't get any easier. In fact, it gets more complex and more challenging as we go along. So as I said, we started our FinOps journey about 4 years ago. Key drivers were we have a multi-cloud strategy. We grew exponentially in our cloud consumption in our first year, about 400%. We had all those crazy cloud bills arriving, 100 million lines long, couldn't utilize Excel to manage our cloud costs. So as an organization, we decided we wanted to invest in FinOps and stand up a FinOps capability. And I think there's probably a similar story to many of you. At the time, I was the IT COO for DevOps and Cloud, which made me or put me in a unique position to look at the financials end-to-end around our cloud and our migration journey. But also, as it was within CTO, I was aligned pretty well to our engineering communities. We spent quite a bit of time thinking about what our target operating model should look like, what capabilities we needed to uplift into the organization, what tooling we needed to support the capabilities and the services we wanted to deliver into the organization. And we also thought about, how quickly we could move forward through this process. So being practitioners, this is the approach that we took. I think many of you are familiar with these terms. We took an approach to roll these out simultaneously, or sequentially, should I say, starting with showback. Chargeback was closely followed by forecasting, etc., and optimization. And what that enabled us to do was build on the successes of each of those pillars if we stood them up into the organization. We also thought about, as I said, our tooling footprint, which tool we would initially roll out, and then some homegrown tools that we've built around it to complete our full ecosystem that manages our cloud footprint end to end. We also thought about business readiness. So whilst we set up a centralized function, we work within a federated model. So what that means is we have capabilities that we've helped train and inject into the global businesses and global functions that are our conduits into the business, that help us evangelize FinOps and help us roll out new tactics, new ideas, and share best practice. So fast forward a few years, this slide is going to stack. But what I wanted to share with you is a snapshot into the optimization activity that we have running simultaneously at any one time. And as you can see, We have optimization tactics that we're able to roll out that work across architecture, usage, and pricing, across all of our multi-cloud platforms, and are at different stages of maturity. The key thing when you get to this level of complexity is understanding how each of these tactics impact each other. Certain tactics you may want to dial up, dial down, may be specific for certain businesses. The previous slide, when I talked about setting up those functions and capabilities around showback, chargeback, etc., the business is used to, and the engineers, seeing their cloud consumption, understanding their data, and therefore translating the impact of our optimization actions that sometimes are central or sometimes are joint with the business on their actual cost base. Many of the tactics that we roll out started in that crawl phase. I'll give an example. Power scheduling initially was an idea, piloted with a few businesses, then became what we would call a policy, then an enforcement policy, and now is automated as part of the CI/CD pipeline in the patterns. So it started in crawl and now is at what we would call run. As we have established and matured as the FinOps capability in HSBC, we've also become what I would call the voice of the end-to-end optimization capability. We do the initial data analysis around what opportunities are arising. We spend time discussing and agreeing the tactics that we want to deploy. We work with not just engineers, but architects to roll out those specific tactics. And then once done and the benefits realized, we then pivot to discussing things with the CIOs and the COOs about the impact that the tactic has made to their cost base, and then ultimately the CSO in terms of tracking these against targets, which hopefully you'll actually be part of setting moving forward. So when I thought about what else I'd like to share with you, or what would I want to know if I was sitting out there, what would I have told myself 4 years ago, this slide is designed to share some of that with you, and hopefully there's a little takeaway for everyone. I think I'll start with forecasting. Ooh, mic's very sensitive. So forecasting. Aligning your consumption forecast to business budgets as early as possible. This was a hard lesson for us at HSBC, but a very valuable one. Forecasting can be very challenging in the early stages. Aligning that forecast to reality as quickly as possible and aligning that to your existing financial processes is quite key to having that cohesive view. We also worked very hard to bring together all of our CSP contracts and understand our forecasts moving forward. The forecasts are owned by the business. My team are custodians of that data and help them to learn to forecast more effectively, but also help to predict where we might end up in 2, 3, 4 years' time. And what that enables us to do is 2 key things. Firstly, negotiate or put us in a better position to negotiate with the CSPs. And once you do that in the aggregate level, it can lead to better discounts. And also, it helps us in terms of predicting the kind of skills and engineering skills, etc., that we want to leave in the organization moving forwards. We were also able to aggregate things like savings plans, CUDs, all those additional stackable discount items. And eventually, in the first year, we were able to save around 60% of our overall savings came from just those 2 tactics. And it also gives you a platform to then build upon. I'd also like to focus a little bit also on the central FinOps team and building leadership or fostering an accountability model very early on. And you can do this by providing the data and transparency to the business, to the decision makers, to the consumption generating entity as early as possible, but also to the engineers and all those involved with impacting the cost in their day-to-day activity, which is, new to many organizations. Also at the central team, I'm very fortunate to have what I would say a phenomenal team. We have built over time SMEs in each of their disciplines, and we co-create every single day. We co-create with each other, we co-create with the engineers. There's always ideas, best practice sharing constantly. Building a team that's agile, it's nimble, that doesn't mind working in the grey, is fundamental to pushing those boundaries when it comes to FinOps of what's possible, but also reinvesting and providing that value back to the business. Time will not permit me to go on further. So lastly, future. So, as I said earlier, it doesn't get simpler, it gets more complex, more exciting, more opportunities. Sustainability is something that many organizations are quite focused on. And what we have done is we've associated our FinOps capabilities and our FinOps optimizations with carbon emissions. So by virtue of performing certain FinOps activities, you are reducing carbon. And the value that my team add is that we are able to translate the carbon emissions in relation to the activities taken or the optimizations taken. We're working on a pilot now to show also estimation. So when you move from on-premise to cloud, how much carbon could you save? That's a very active part of what we're doing. The wider value proposition is also a key focus area. And what I mean by that is over and above cost. We talk about cost a lot when we talk about cloud consumption, but there are many other benefits to moving to the cloud, and that wider benefit proposition is very key to articulating the value delivered from your cloud journey. So we have defined what we call a benefit framework. That's also in its pilot stage, and the intended use is to have a key set of metrics and KPIs that can standardize that view across the wider value proposition. So time to market, resilience, carbon, all those additional things over and above cost. Automation, shift left. So we're also actively looking at how we can eliminate waste before it even occurs in our development and our production environments. And we're looking at patterns and working very closely with architecture. We talk a lot about the engineers, and the engineers are key, but as you mature, you'll be engaging a lot more with the architects being more FinOps minded when it comes to solution design, and also when you're releasing products on your platform and working with the businesses as they roll out. Full stack FinOps. What do I mean by full stack FinOps? For me, FinOps principles can be applied in many places, in many ways. We're looking at bringing our internal cloud, our hybrid cloud into our FinOps practices. Also, perhaps SaaS licensing, and maybe the wider estate. You may not be able to optimize in the same way, but the principles around efficiency, utilization, transparency, all of those key principles of FinOps are key to all of those areas. So something that you could maybe all think about and how you might apply that to your own organizations. And then lastly, MI and financial processes. As your costs grow, as your consumption grows, organizations that have traditional CapEx processes will continue to strain under the change of moving to an OpEx. So the volatility and elasticity of cloud and the need to isolate things like optimization and benefit from growth, your financial processes will need to adapt. From a FinOps point of view, you've got a key role to play in that, and MI and the things that you produce from the FinOps capability will be key to helping your organization make some of those decisions. I'm at time now. Anyone who knows me knows I can talk about FinOps happily for hours. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful few days. It's a very unique opportunity. Only the FinOps Foundation can bring us together in this way. I will be here for the rest of the time. So please grab me, ask me any questions, talk to each other, share, and most of all, have a wonderful time. Thank you.
Natalie, before you go, where can people find you later in the conference?
I will be floating around. I'll be out here. I'll be in all the breakout
Gonna be at the party?
rooms. Yes, I will.
All right.
Of course.
Come find her. Ask questions. Thank you again, Natalie.
Thank you very much.
So, Natalie and the team have been at it for years, and it only gets more complex. Processes need to change and adapt and evolve over time. Now, FinOps practice requires strong individuals, folks like Natalie and a lot of folks you're going to see around this conference. But at its core, FinOps is really a team sport. It's a collaboration discipline. It's about working together. An individual can go do, like an optimization sprint or work on some tagging over the weekend, but it's about getting the organization to change, getting finance and engineering to work together. And really, the big thing that we're seeing emerging in the last couple of years is getting alignment, not just from bottoms up, where people are starting to do FinOps because it's the right thing to do, but tops down from an executive standpoint and getting all sides of the coin. So our next speakers recently joined the FinOps Foundation in our enterprise program, and what's really special about them is that they are two executives from both sides of the coin, from the tech side and the finance side, who are both collaborating in this area. So wanted to welcome to the stage RJ Hazra and Scott Johnson from Equifax.
Ready to do this? All right.
What, no crazy train? I thought we were going to have a crazy train coming out here or something. All right.
Hey, I wanted to just start out by saying a big thank you to JR and the FinOps Foundation for giving us the opportunity to speak a little bit about what I think has been an extremely transformative experience for Equifax. Before we really get into what has been going on at Equifax for the last, I would say, 3 years, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what Equifax is. I think most folks would know Equifax as a credit bureau. But the reality is Equifax is a data and analytics and technology company that's really helping our customers make the best decisions possible as it pertains to folks like you and I, consumers, and how we live our financial best. We're in over 24 countries, in almost every industry that you can think of, whether it's financial services, mortgage, auto, healthcare, government. Whenever and wherever there is a very critical and pivotal decision that's needed in your economic lives, the fun part about working at Equifax is there, right? Whether you're buying a car, sending kids off to college, going to college yourselves, buying the first house, second house, investment properties. Equifax is there, and it's been an incredibly fun ride to really go through and change the entire blueprint of a long-standing company in a long-standing industry. And I'm going to turn over to Scott to talk a little bit about what the cloud has meant for us, and then go from there.
No, sounds good. Thank you, RJ. And building on what RJ said, the cloud transformation for us was enormous. It's a $1.5 billion investment to reimagine our company, to embark on a threefold strategy. It was established security leadership. And for us, security leadership was also giving back to the community and to the world, not just doing it for ourselves, but be active in the community and help do that. The second part for us is move to 100% cloud-native operations, which for an over 100-year-old company, yeah, we have some more stories to tell over drinks. It's been entertaining, but it will allow us to drive better performance, scalability, and unlock speed of innovation that the company's never seen. And the last part is we're bringing all of our data together in an enterprise data fabric that will allow us to have real-time insights to our customers like we've never been able to do before. And the results, besides, as RJ made fun of me beforehand, that I think I have a lot more gray hair than when this started, in a few years we've made significant strides. Re-engineering the company from the ground up, cultural changes has been really hard. And we're starting to see the power of a cloud-native agility of a cloud-native company in Equifax with the expertise that we've had and discipline over 100 years in the business. So those insights, bringing that together has been exciting, but it hasn't been without challenges, has it, RJ?
No, it has not. So look, we actually ended up finding ourselves in a very precarious position. Although the cloud and cloud culture has really brought a ton of opportunity for growth for us, and I think JR said earlier, really going to the cloud and adopting the FinOps culture is really about growth, right? Not necessarily about cost, but about growth. You know, what we found ourselves in, and you heard this earlier this morning, is we went from a fixed cost type framework from an infrastructure perspective straight to variable. And we also saw that we really had no visibility in terms of how that cost structure was going to behave. And that's really a position that I think a lot, if not all, finance leaders are finding themselves in today. I think I was reading a Gartner study the other day that the #1 concern for finance leaders has been cloud cost. And that's where FinOps has really saved us, right? Starting with gaining the visibility, then going into kind of our thought process on the tagging structure, which is the structure that you see behind me in the slide, to really driving the conversation and changing the conversation to a unit economics and value conversation. And that's been the game changer for us in terms of stopping the talking about cost and starting talking about value and unit economics. And it's really been through the FinOps practice, and we'll get into it a little bit through the Q&A in terms of how we got there. With that, I'll pass it over to Scott to talk a little bit about our FinOps structure.
It's a new slide. It's always entertaining when you go through one of these. But yeah, we developed a cloud center of excellence. So we embarked on a hub and spoke model. So we did centralize a lot of the functions to start out of the gate. And as RJ mentioned, we had shared targets. And be completely honest, we were, you know, the business, as RJ said, as we got to the unit economics, really got engaged in understanding, look, there's the risk component to it. Now, as you're in an OpEx cloud-driven world, there was a lot of nerves from the business, and the variability swings is something they haven't seen or were very nervous about. So as we started to give that level of transparency and the engagement, we had a lot of business leaders really jump in and have excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think the transition in terms of first providing the visibility and then giving an understanding of what cloud is and the language of cloud has really helped business leaders start to ask the right questions. And that's really what you want from business leaders at the end of the day, is they're asking you the value questions that you can actually talk to that are in domain.
Yeah, and understanding the impact of that from the inception of an idea, taking it out to market, what those impacts are going to be through the entire life cycle of a product was fantastic. We also saw fantastic enablement from everyone in the company on the technology side as we worked to shift left from architecture all the way through delivery. That is you, many people out here, practitioners were engaged. We got a lot of energy from across the organization. We tried to gamify some of it in places, but just the visibility and getting our various business units and teams working the ideas were fantastic. And I think one thing that I would pass on as we're talking too is just remember in your organization and build that really open culture. The ideas are going to come from across the organization, and every idea is a good idea. And I guess one thing I would impart to the practitioners out here, be bold. Bring up those ideas. All the ideas are great, and we saw a lot of great value from that across our organization at various layers of people having really good ideas on really taking it from a cost avoidance or just risk reduction to really some aggressive ideas. And the journey to cloud native is tough. It's hard, and this is a great practice that gave us some great foundational elements.
So I'll invite JR back up here
Hello.
to do a little Q&A.
And there is a joke here, and I couldn't quite get it, that having RJ and JR on the stage is a moderate nightmare to.
I had his name badge on yesterday, actually. It was really confusing for folks. So you talked about ideas, and one of the things I'm intrigued by with the fact that you're both up here covering this is that everybody thinks the tech folks should be focused more on cost, and everybody knows the finance people are focused on keeping that aligned. But there's often like differing motivations, and you can get people excited about it, but let me start from the tech side. I mean, how did you actually start to change the culture from a structural standpoint where these considerations were being pushed into your sprints, into architecture reviews, into early stage? Like, what was the actual thing that you did?
I think the first part, and RJ touched on it, was first visibility, right? Awareness to the teams and importance. So it does come down to leadership showing the importance of it. The second part is the visibility. And I've been in this business for a while, as the gray hairs do show, but the tech people really want to get involved and help. I've not met a tech person that does not want to help and drive the business to do better, to increase their impact on the organization. So once we had that visibility down into the tech teams, again, as I mentioned a minute ago, the ideas were really coming up. So it's leadership driving it down, it's the visibility and impact that people can have, and then it's building a reward structure around that so that people are incented to continue to do that.
Let me double click on that. A reward structure. Are we talking bonuses? Are we talking advancement? What sort of reward structures?
As everybody knows in leadership here, people are motivated in different ways. It can be recognition and the broader recognition all the way up to the SLT in a company.
Yep.
That does a lot for people. Spot bonuses. Part of that as well, and people are getting promoted in this practice. I think as you touched on earlier, this is a great field to be in, and seeing people progress in their corporate career is another great motivation. So a little bit of all of those techniques really helps.
So
RJ, I would just say that it pays for itself, right? Folks might be like, reward structure automatically means remunerations and budgets and all of those things come into consideration. But the reality is what we have found is by motivating folks, making sure they're speaking the common language and have the visibility, the optimization benefits that you get pay for any amount of recognition dollars that you're going to put out there, and then tenfold.
What did you have to change within the financial organization once you were more in cloud and had your FinOps practice running? What were the hardest challenges?
So I would say there was a major cultural change in terms of going back to we have to speak a common language.
Between you and the tech teams, or
between finance and the tech. I mean, Scott and I still don't speak a common language, but
well, I've talked to Scott.
Our teams, no, but in reality, between the technology teams and the finance teams, both groups had to lean in. And the reason they leaned in is because they realized they couldn't do it without each other. They all had a single piece of a pie that needed to work together. And you add sourcing to that as well, to really round out the organization, to figure out what's the common language, what's the common goal, and then execute to that.
And one thing to that, I think, is building common awareness across this, because we said ideas will come from everywhere, and it was fascinating to me watching one of the finance guys really mad about why we weren't moving everything to AMD processors, and that should be easy, and it's a ton of savings. Yeah. So I do think the awareness and the conversations that go on between finance, sourcing, and technology, it really does help to bind people together for also a greater awareness of what each function has to do and really build that culture of a team. So it's fascinating to watch some of those arguments.
So what was in the cloud transformation process? What was the aha moment where you went, oh, we really got to build a FinOps practice and start thinking, what was the time where you said, okay, this is it?
I'll start with that one, and then you can tack on. So, it was almost like overnight, right? My cloud cost went up, I want to say 250x, right, in 1 month. Ooh. So it didn't take a rocket scientist CFO to do a run rate on that and say, hey, shoot, I might have a $150 million problem on my hands.
Yeah.
So, and then, as any finance person would do, you start asking questions. And what we realized very quickly is no one had the answers to those questions. And that's where FinOps came and saved us, right? In terms of really understanding a structured approach in terms of how we could get to those answers. And it created a sense of urgency in the leadership team that we needed those answers.
Yeah, and that much of an overage will create some urgency, I imagine. Yes. All right.
Yeah, it was entertaining. But yeah, also I think with the FinOps Foundation and what we're bringing into those models for us, it was also not a one and done problem.
Yeah.
This is as you said earlier, a cultural change that needed to happen. As we mentioned on our cloud transformation journey, that's where we intend to ride. We have to have this as a discipline that's really ingrained in our teams and in our organization. So that's another reason we're doubling down on the commitment and why we need to have that sustainable practice with us.
So as I mentioned in your intro, one of the things that has evolved is that the cloud and FinOps as a practice has moved into sort of a board level concern in the last few years with the materiality of cloud spend. We have a lot of people in the audience who don't have C's in their title, like you all do, and I think one of the things we're always trying to figure out is how do we go if we know that there's a problem and we know that we have a set of tools to go and influence somebody in a financial leader's position and a technical leader position. Like, what guidance would you give to this group to go help get their leaders aligned to support them correctly in this practice?
Look, I would start out by saying just be bold and put the data out there, right? Even though it can be uncomfortable sometimes in doing some of these calculations and saying, hey, look, we've got a problem here that we need to face into. But I think the reality of it is, like, if you are bold and you can show that there is something that needs to be done from a data-oriented approach perspective in a language that the business understands, I think you'll find that very quickly people will want to invest in solving the problem. And it's got to be approached as a collaborative problem-solving situation. Scott, what would you add?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And I think we've touched on it a couple of times. I mean, it's material to the products or services that your company's delivering, so it's going to have the attention of the business leaders as a whole. It's material to the profitability of your company. I think those things, and as RJ said, the teamwork is really important to continue to echo.
The one, I think, last point, Jared, that I would make is we always talk about cost and cost control a lot, but at least for us, what we've realized is the benefit of velocity that you get from the cloud is really energizing to the GMs in our business. And sometimes it may be even easier to talk about the good first, right? Versus going directly into, hey, we got to get control.
Celebrate the wins.
Yeah, celebrate the wins and how quickly you can get products out the door in multiple geographies, as an example.
But then also the realization that a lot of you that are on the cloud journey, and I know it's been around and people have been saying it for a while, but like it is different, right? It is different when you think about you're having the new releases and you have elongated testing or your schedule goes. Like being able to predict that early on and understand that life cycle is really important and important to the business, and it's hard. Like you guys are doing great work and it's super important, but that is hard work, and driving that consistency and predictability, I think, into the business is something that's critical for all of us as we continue to mature this practice.
I'm hearing a lot of principles in there. It's shifting left to the data, it's about accountability, it's about getting the data out there. I know you all have a session coming up. Where can the group come here? I think you're with Google Cloud.
Yeah, so there's a great session coming up today that I hope everyone can attend, where we're going to get into a real case study in terms of some of the things that we're seeing at Equifax. I will certainly be around in all the networking sessions to answer questions and have some fun with you guys.
Same here. I'm on the Google Cloud panel, on the discussion that Brian has later today for Equifax is fantastic. Highly encourage you to check that out a little more detailed level, and we'll be around having fun.
Thank you, gentlemen. Come find these guys. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good clicker. Thank you. Very fascinating to see the interplay between the two sides of the house there. And this year we have seen a lot of companies focus on efficiency because there's been some things, I guess, threatening to happen in the economy. I'm not sure if they have yet. I'm still tracking. But the focus on that efficiency is really shifting, again, away from necessarily saving money, but really to how can we make a more material impact on the balance sheet. And as has come up a couple times, because most of these companies are in growth phases, not only in their larger businesses, but especially in the cloud side particularly. So one of the really hard things, and when I heard this, met this speaker a few months back, and I heard him talking about how difficult it is to shift a giant organization culturally from one that is used to dealing with a ton of on-premise hardware and a lot of conventional IT resources into a world where they need to move quickly, they need to collaborate, they need to share data, but they also want to stay true to their company culture, and they've got a lot of different clouds, on-prem, they've got different data types that are coming in geographically, as well as a large digital footprint. So very excited to hear this next speaker talk about scale and moving that at a company the size of the Fortune 1. Please welcome Tim O'Brien from Walmart. Kill it, man.
All right. I'm so excited to be here. I just wanted to say that I could talk about FinOps for about 2 days straight. So one of the things I want to talk about today is the company I work for. It's probably the most interesting place to work. Whether it's how we use blockchain to make sure the produce you get is fresh, to our investment in sustainable seafood, to what we're doing right now, to invest in reducing packaging waste. We are a company that you can work at, and every day you learn about something that has dramatically positive impact. In the words of our CEO, we are a people-led, tech-powered, omni-channel retailer. We're helping people save money so they can live better. And I'll bring that up again, save money, live better. My focus is on cloud efficiency, and I work with a huge team that spans multiple departments, and two of my partners in the first row, Carl and Patrick. So we span engineering, finance, and business. And we operate a multi-cloud system, multiple public cloud providers, and our own private data centers. We're in markets across 20 countries. And we run systems from websites that have hundreds of components, thousands of components even, to fulfillment centers and distribution centers with cloud-enabled conveyor belts, labeling, everything you can think of. We have a private fleet of trucks, several of which you probably passed on the way here, and they're always connected. And if you work on FinOps at this scale, you meet everybody. It's really a team sport. You also learn about every single project we're doing. Again, I've been there a decade. I learn something new every day, and it's always astounding and very positive. So one thing you learn as well is that cloud efficiency is neither simple nor straightforward. It's not a dashboard. We can't run a report about CPU across all of our projects and tell everybody to scale up and scale down in unison. Every market has completely different risk parameters. And even every application area within those markets has completely different standards. So you can't scale a website the same way you scale the pharmacy systems. That pharmacist is in the store serving customers right now. Or we have a fulfillment center, like the one we just built in Indiana that's 2.2 million square feet, and we have people working every day on some of the most automated technologies you've seen in the industry. So everything is on cloud, and the more we invest in cloud, the more we have to remind ourselves about two of Sam Walton's rules. Rule number 9 is control your expenses. This is where you can always find the competitive advantage. And we do. FinOps is that. And I'll talk more about what that means. My favorite rule is rule number 10, which is swim upstream. Go the other way. Ignore the conventional wisdom. There's a number of people in this room who have worked with us in the past. You know that we've been focused on cloud efficiency even when it wasn't cool. So the work never stops. What does efficiency mean to us? So it's interesting. Everything is interesting. It's not just about cost savings. And I've heard a lot of people say, like, FinOps is cool and we invested in it, but we didn't see the savings. Savings is possible, right? You invest in FinOps, you have a great team, you're moving quickly, and what you'll find is cost savings is not the only thing you get. We have a unique spin on cost savings, and for our largest teams in omnichannel, what we do is we focus them on their daily spend rate. We don't focus them on the year or the month. We ask them to track their spend every day. So they're looking at their chart every week. We send them reports. We send them targets. We say, you're spending here. We'd like you to be here by this date. And that can be up or down depending on where they are. If they're a growth area, they can grow. And what that means is that we're asking them questions every day. Why did your spend go up? Was it your database? Was it your log volume? Are you using too much? Are you using the right SKUs, right? Are you running a memory-bound workload on the wrong SKU? And what we do is we train them to answer those questions for themselves. I want to be really clear there. FinOps is not here to answer the questions for those teams. We're training those teams to have the discipline to pay attention, to be present in the moment. And that doesn't just allow us to manage spend. It has other benefits. One of them is reliability. So you train all these teams to pay attention to their daily spend. Guess what? Those teams know what graphs to look at, what metrics to look at every day. So if there happens to be an incident, they're usually the first ones on the call and they know what to do. Cost discipline yields higher reliability. The other thing that it trains people to do is think about their architecture. Very often people will ship software, they'll put it into production, and then it just sits there for a year. Well, if you're paying attention every day, you're asking yourselves questions like, am I using the right database? Can I use a different SKU? Is there a change I can make? What's my storage archival policy? So these are all things that all contribute to readiness. And the one thing I want to say is that if you focus on the present moment, you're more ready. You're ready to react, be it cloud cost, be it reliability, and all these things, because customers are depending on us 24/7 to help them save money and live better. So you win the championship by focusing on every single game. So when we started our multi-cloud journey years ago, we had to take all of the cost data from multiple public cloud providers and private cloud and put it into one single view. It's not as easy as it sounds. One provider might track compute in a completely different way than another provider. On private, we have to transform our CapEx spend into an OpEx model. What we have is a single view. We actually have an hourly cost for all resources, and we bring that together. What does that let us do? It lets us make better decisions. For workload placement, we can look at that single view to decide which provider does it go on. Does it go on private? Does it go on public? If someone says, well, what percentage are we spending on logs? We can look at that across public and private. And our architectures are increasingly hybrid. We have things that are spanning both public and private. The return on investment for this has been huge. The investment has been many years. Several of you in this room were working on this over the last 6 years. And that's something I want to emphasize. FinOps is a long game. You have to have a commitment to strategy, and you have to make the right decisions. In our world, our superstars are our architects and our engineers, and what we've done to make a difference is we've invested in the data. We put that data in the right hands, and we've allowed them to do FinOps. I've said this before, the job of FinOps is to enable, the job of FinOps is to give the credit to everyone else. You're here to enable teams to save money. You're not doing all the FinOps if you're the FinOps team. So show of hands, how many people in this room in the last month have been asked to create a cost model for generative AI? Okay, a sizable number. Someone hit fast forward on the future button. And I think that this technology is going to be the center of a lot of change. Our CTO, Suresh Kumar, called it a watershed moment for computing, and I think he's right. There are new SKUs we need to worry about. There are new PaaS services on multiple cloud providers. I think this is the moment for FinOps to come together and have a discussion about how we pay for this. How do we bill? One provider might be billing you per 1,000 tokens. Another provider might be billing you per 1,000 characters. You're going to have to invest in private infrastructure if you're going to train your own models. Vector databases maybe are a new area for some of you. We need to come together and create a standard model so that we can compare and contrast, and we can have a more intelligent discussion about what this technology is. Because I guarantee you in 10 years, we're not going to be talking about VMs and storage as much as we're going to be talking about cognitive services, quantum computing, and other things that are going to show up. It's time for us to invest in focus. So the FinOps Foundation announced focus this year, and as soon as I heard about it, I wanted to get us involved. I want us to participate in the conversation to define a standard for billing across multiple cloud providers. And you'll hear about that more in a second. What we're doing is we're getting together. I'm in 3 meetings a week, and we're talking about how do we standardize on a set of fields that are common amongst providers. The providers are on the call, other companies are on the call, vendors are on the call who create software. I think that this is really the answer that's going to bring us forward. And really what we need to do next is participate. Focus is the standard. In a year, in 2 years, you're going to be consuming feeds from your providers. That'll be following this specification. And I think today is the day that you all should sign up. If you want to learn about Focus, you'll hear about that now. But I encourage you all to participate. And I'm going to see a lot more people on these Zoom calls. We're probably going to have to create another few squads. But really, Walmart is really interested in communicating and helping work with the community because we believe the future here is this open source spec. So thank you very much. And that's it.
Great. Well done. Thank you, Tim. So Tim is highlighting that real-world problem we've all faced in FinOps. I've been in this cloud cost management game for about 12 years, and underlying the practice is always the elephant in the room, which is the data. The data is complex. It's not complex because it's bad. It's necessarily complex because it has to be granular, it has to be fresh, it has to cover a lot of services. But the challenge I've always seen in most FinOps practices at all stages is there's a lack of trust that results in the data because people don't understand it, they can't align it, they can't normalize it. So this is a problem that everyone faces. We've been aware of this for a while, but we hadn't actually started a official approach on it until about a year ago. There was a podcast that happened with Nathan Besh, some of you all know, and Udam from the community, and they basically gave us a shout out as the foundation to start an initiative to solve this problem. So when Udam became available, we actually got Udam to join the FinOps Foundation to work on this standard, and we're going to hear a bit about that for now. Udam is the new chair of the Focus Working Group. Please welcome to the stage Udam Dewaraja.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Wow, I never imagined FinOps growing to this level of scale. Credit goes out to JR and the team. This is incredible. Thank you, Tim and the Walmart team. You all have been great partners with us on Focus. I've been around cloud and FinOps for the past dozen years. Started at AWS, building some of the early cloud offerings, then worked at Apptio, building cost management solutions. Last few years, I was at Citi, leading cloud financial management for them. Now I'm completing that cycle by joining the foundation to run this Focus project. I am convinced Focus will be a game changer for FinOps. Before I jump in, Naomi joined us last week in the middle of trying to get the Focus release out. The FinOps' life slogan really hit home last week. Jokes aside, we here at the foundation, we're all in on Focus. And as you'll soon see, we're not the only ones. Cost and usage data is the foundation on top of FinOps is built on. As practitioners, we know the data sets that are out there today, they're not great for FinOps. We turn into magicians. We work through proprietary schemas, terminologies, and vendor-specific constructs to serve our organization's needs. We do all of that, and then our organization wants to adopt more providers, and they want to do advanced FinOps. So our jobs are getting harder. All of the magic that we do, we still end up with siloed data sets in our organization. You hit another brick wall when your organization wants to drive FinOps to the edges of your organization. It's just not possible to have engineering, finance, and business folks all understanding every billing data set and their intricacies. Trust me, I tried it. Focus. It's a common schema and a lexicon for FinOps, purpose-built for FinOps. It provides clarity, consistency, and simplicity. With focus data sets, you're able to drive the data to the edges of your organization and focus more on more value-added tasks like cost optimization and cost management. The FinOps framework and training will align with Focus. It will truly make Focus the language of FinOps. Imagine a world where you no longer have to be the choke point for your organization for FinOps because of all the complexity in the data. Imagine a simpler data set where you're able to drive this to the edges of your organization so you don't have to worry about all of this complexity that today you're answering the questions for. I wish I had focused when I was at Citi. It would have made my life a whole lot easier. Today, I'm excited to announce the v0.5 release of the Focus Specification. It codifies 25 of the most commonly used dimensions, metrics, and attributes that you use for FinOps. And we're just getting started. Full Focus adoption will require providers to natively disseminate Focus-compatible data sets. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But we don't have to wait too long, because we've kicked off work for a Focus data validator that's available today. And we're kicking off working groups for Focus data converters for every major cloud provider. So get involved, please. That'll be an important part and a catalyst for adoption in the early days. The value of FinOps doesn't stop at the cloud. That's why for the 1.0 release, we're focusing on SaaS spend, internal cloud spend, and licensing costs and other billing data sets in addition to the cloud data sets. Focus will play a key role in FinOps extending beyond cloud into the other types of spend in your organization. None of this work would be possible without the member organizations and my team of billing data geeks. Contributors. You know I love you. Many of you are out here. Thank you so much for volunteering your time and effort for the betterment of FinOps. There is a ton of excitement around Focus. The 3 of the top 4 cloud providers are all in on Focus. Others are in the process of joining to contribute. As you'll hear from the cloud panel shortly, cloud providers are looking to add Focus into their native cost management capabilities that are out there today. Just to give you a sense for some of the excitement and adoption, the Microsoft FinOps Toolkit in GitHub already has some Focus reporting capabilities. Spot by NetApp, Flexera, the Open Cost Project, they're all adopting and building Focus integration right now. Organizations like JP Morgan Chase, Capital One, Atlassian, Nationwide, and Chevron are adopting Focus as soon as it's available. Focus will make your jobs easier. It's free and it's open source. If you didn't see your cloud or SaaS provider's name listed there before, please ask them to join, contribute, and adopt. Our doors are wide open. Join us at the breakout session for an in-depth look at Focus. Learn about adopting in your organization and contributing to the ecosystem. This is important. All of you have a big role to play here. I encourage you to ask your cloud and SaaS providers for billing data in Focus Specification. That will be the way that we drive some of the adoption. Providers are hearing this already. So the louder you are and the more of you that ask, the sooner we'll get to the native support. Just remember, this work right now that we're announcing was done in just the last 10 weeks. We're planning more announcements around the cloud conferences. Imagine what the billing data geeks would have done by the next time we talk to you at one of these conferences. Thank you so much.
Amazing. I got to especially give you a shout out. We didn't know when he was going to disappear for little Naomi coming, and he was all in focus on focus. Disappeared, came back. Thank you for making time and all that. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
So cool. That's 10 weeks of work, the first version 0.5. Want to reiterate, please come find us at Google Next, where there's going to be additional announcements, around Ignite. Also, maybe at the Venetian in Vegas after Thanksgiving. We'll have lots of announcements coming related to this. Now, focus today, I want to double down on this, is very much around public cloud. That's where not only the problem is, but public cloud has the variability, the freshness, the granularity of the data. This is going to move quickly into other types of spend. And one of the things I'm most excited for with this is the specification aspect provides a roadmap for SaaS providers. You saw folks like Datadog and Domo up there on that slide, where these SaaS providers can align spend data to make sure that it can come in alongside other types of cloud costs as part of that. The really great thing about Focus as well is it helps everybody. It helps the practitioners adopt the practice. As a practitioner, it helps you not only accelerate your reporting, but move to another company or hire somebody else into your company. Build your team without starting from scratch. Should we call it procurement discounts or amortized or reserved, or it all gets normalized? I see this as the defining project for the FinOps Foundation and the way that we can make the most impact. There are a lot of tooling providers out there. There's a lot of clouds. This makes their life and yours easier and ultimately lets you integrate tooling more efficiently or build your own, depending on if you want to go that way as well. The best thing, I think, though, is the talent portability aspect, where you don't need to relearn language from one company to the next. So, this panel next, I'm so excited. I was like, didn't know if we could pull it off. We have 3 VPs from 3 cloud providers here, from Oracle, from Microsoft, and from Google, who are the owners of the product and engineering teams who build this cloud data and deliver it out to you. And they're all very excited to talk about how they're plugging in. And we're going to ask them a bit about where they see the future of cloud billing evolve to. Before we bring them out, leading the panel is our fearless chairperson, Jen Hayes from Fidelity. Jen, can you come on out? Jen and I were having a little fight before about who had the most colorful shoes. I guess she has more color, I have all the colors. Anyway, nice shoes, I like them.
We had to step up our shoe game here.
So Jen, you coined my favorite unofficial definition of FinOps. You want to share it?
So I remember this at CloudyCon 4 years ago, sitting there and thinking, how can you talk about FinOps in one small sentence? And it's really about bringing the most value out of every dollar you spend in the cloud.
Yep, and I think that nails it in the shortest possible way. So Jen has been our board chairperson, helping us to figure out where we invest time and dollars and how we direct staff energies. What have you seen thematically in the last year change in the FinOps Foundation and the community?
Well, the last year has been explosive from a FinOps standpoint. Last year, you talked about it earlier today, we were a couple hundred people in Austin at the FinOps conference.
Your home turf.
My home turf. I'm from Texas. And so at that event, it was the first post-COVID event, the opportunity that we had. We heard 3 different themes there. 1, more events, more opportunities to actually connect. And so you've seen a lot of that evolve over the last year, from the ambassador programs and also local events, and then of course culminating in FinOps X here with 1,200 people, which is amazing. The second thing was more training, more information, more best practices. And so as you presented earlier today too, we leaned heavily into making sure that not only we had training, but we had training that was very specific to the different roles that participate in FinOps. And then the third really was, we heard this at the FinOps X conference last year, and we heard it at our governance boards and our TAC boards, was how could we lean more in to influencing the big cloud service providers, and specifically on the billing standards.
Great. Well, I'm going to leave this panel in your capable hands. There's your timer, and we'll see you in a bit.
All right. Thank you. 25 minutes and counting down.
Come on out, panelists.
So far.
First of all, welcome. Let me just say that. This is an unprecedented event to have 3 of the large CSPs together talking about cloud optimization, cloud billing, and some of the influence that you've had on the community as a whole. So first, I just want to say welcome to Mich, Razon, to Phil Newman, to Fred I said Fred Lombardi because he told me that's how you say your name. Fred Delombaerde from Microsoft. Thank you guys so much for participating in the panel today. I first want to actually ask you a little bit of a personal question. We have a whole room full of practitioners, and all of us kind of have our own story about how we got into FinOps. And so I'd love to actually hear from each of you, talk a little bit about what brought you in to FinOps and cloud optimization. Mich, I love your story. Why don't you start?
Oh, absolutely. And I should start off with I'm incredibly grateful to be here at the largest gathering of FinOps practitioners ever. That's fantastic. But I have actually been involved in leading or driving enterprise digital transformation throughout most of my career. I'm also now responsible for every dollar that gets monetized for Google Cloud as well, including our financials. And so I can remember years ago being the first person in my company to try to leverage cloud to develop and deploy new services. And I'd gotten the buy-in from the executive leadership. I got that precious budget allocation. I mobilized my agile teams to start deploying our infrastructure and our services on cloud. And then a couple months into the program, one engineer stood up resource-intensive services and let them run. And the next month, we blew our entire budget for the program. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had that type of experience. And that was one of those critical moments where I realized digital transformation is also cultural transformation. It's about cost management, cost awareness, cost optimization, and making that part of how you move forward, how you drive to the cloud. And so since that moment, I've been very focused on both sides of the fence, on enabling capabilities, enabling education, enabling support to ensure that we can go smartly, drive innovation, and understand the impacts and the efficiency that we can drive with cloud and digital transformation.
Well, thank you, Mich. Phil, love to hear yours.
Sure. So I joined Oracle about 5 years ago, and Oracle's cloud was just brand new at the time. It was in its infancy and didn't have that many customers. I worked at Microsoft before that for a while, also on cloud, and I wanted to be part of the energy of a new cloud that was being built up. And I remember when I joined, my boss said to me, well, Phil, do you want to work on identity or billing? And I said, identity. And that week, after I'd had that conversation, we got our first billing escalation that was delivered, and my boss said, we don't know who will take care of this. Phil, take care of this. And working through that with the customer and figuring out how to solve those problems really got me interested in the cloud billing space and FinOps, and ever since then I've been working on it.
Great story. Fred.
Awesome. And first of all, thank you, Jen, and thank you to JR for setting up this fantastic event. And I know I share with the panel that we're really excited to be here today. My history, I started my career kind of in the startup space, and as many of you know, the startup space is tight budgeted, and every dollar you save in a startup is a dollar you can reinvest in the business, whether that's bringing on new talent, whether that's investing in new projects and new ways to differentiate. So that's kind of really been ingrained in me. And as I joined Microsoft now, 17 years ago, which is a little surprising, and I now own kind of the commerce platform and footprint that includes the cost management pieces, the marketplace pieces, a lot like what Mich is doing as well, and Phil as well. And I now have the opportunity to kind of influence and enable our customers and partners. And what we've come to realize, and this is really demonstrated with data, is that every dollar we can help our customers save, right, is a dollar that they can reinvest in their business. And we've seen that to be true time and time again. And so allowing our customers to expand their business is good for them, it's good for their business, it's good for our partners' business, and ultimately it's good business for Microsoft and any of the cloud providers. So this is a great forum for that discussion.
Well, we are excited to hear a little bit more about, from each of your companies, about some of the questions that we have. So first, we just heard about focus, right? Udam came through and talked about focus and the project that came on. And we also heard from Walmart about how important it was to them that we had this type of initiative together, and that all of the CSPs participate in it. So tell me, why would you be willing, as CSPs, the representative CSPs, to participate in an initiative like Focus, and how do you see Focus helping your customers? So we're going to start with you, Phil.
Sure. So JR talked about this a little bit, and I'll reemphasize one of his points that I think the main group that will benefit from Focus is everyone here. It will have kind of results across the industry. So if you look at tooling providers, it will make it a lot easier for tooling providers to get plugged in and build tools that will bring new ideas to FinOps and to have them apply broadly across all of the CSPs out there. So I think it's going to bring in more tools, it's going to give practitioners more choice, and you're asking, why would my company, Oracle, as a CSP participate? Well, we want to participate with that ecosystem too. We're never going to build all of the tools that our customers need. So it's a win for everybody. It's a win for the providers, it's a win for FinOps practitioners, and it's a win for tooling providers as well.
Fred?
Yeah, first of all, I completely agree with the points that you're making. And one of the things I wouldn't underestimate is the amount of effort that we spend as cloud providers and as partners to fully understand and wrap our heads around the FinOps space and the requirements for FinOps. And so the focus effort for us is this unique opportunity where we as cloud providers can work with our partners and the ISVs directly with the FinOps community that's represented here to come up with what is kind of the de facto spec, right, that we can implement against and meet your requirements. And so that focus effort for us really provides us an insight to what we need to build to enable and power your businesses across the board. So we think it's a fantastic opportunity. I completely agree with Phil.
So I'm sitting here looking at the audience, and they're all agreeing. They're nodding in head. And so, Mich, tell us also about Google and why you're participating.
No, absolutely. And Phil and Fred, I think, covered it as well. For Google, we've endeavored to build the most open cloud platform in the industry, and it's part of our DNA. So this was sort of a no-brainer. It aligned with our core principles on making sure that our customers have access to open data and optionality, and driving innovation in tooling, acceleration across the industry, which benefits all of us in sort of this virtuous cycle. To all the points made, I think we're aligned that this is going to be a benefit for practitioners, it'll be a benefit for cloud service providers, it will be a benefit for partners, and we've sort of focused on creating open specs, supporting the open movement, and we believe that this is going to make a huge impact very quickly.
So one of the key pieces right about that is the standards and the billing process, of course. So let's talk about who has the responsibility of managing the bill itself, right? So Fred, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think, to me, I think about this in three parts, and the responsibility is shared kind of across three parties. And the first is obviously the cloud providers, that are represented here, and we're responsible for not just the infrastructure and making sure that your business is successful, but also ensuring that we have the right data pipelines, ensuring that we're providing you the data feeds, the reporting, and the tooling on which you can build your FinOps practice as well as empower your business. But that's just one part of the puzzle, and I think that's our responsibility, and I think I'm missing compliance and security and SOX readiness and all of that good stuff. Those are all things that we share. But a big participant in that is our partner and ISV community as well. And we're in a position where we can't meet 100% of all of your requirements. Each of your businesses is subtly different. I think the focus effort is going to go a long way in making headway there. But each of you is going to try and differentiate in one way or another. And so you're going to work with partners, you're going to work with our partners, Google's partners, Oracle's partners, to kind of better empower and enable your business. And I think there's a responsibility there as well from the partner space. And that's something that we cherish and welcome with open arms. And then kind of the final one is really falls back to our customers and the FinOps practitioners. And this is really kind of the responsibility of doing things responsibly and getting educated. And this is really what this forum is all about. And it's understanding, not just following best practices, but understanding that the FinOps practice is tightly bound with the engineering practice, and those two things are kind of very tightly coupled together. And if your engineering teams, aren't following best practices, then you're limited from a FinOps perspective to actually be able to save money and manage your budget. So I do think it's kind of across all three.
So Mich, I saw you strongly agreeing with what he was saying. What would you like to add?
No, I agree totally what you said. I love the concept of sort of this multilateral partnership involving service providers, our partners, and our customers. And I also believe just looking at it from a different angle when we think about responsibility, the information that we get from usage, the information we provide for your bill is multi-directional. We use that information as cloud service providers to make responsible decisions, sustainable decisions about how to build out our cloud, what regions we want to grow, what services you're using. We look at your commitments to understand how you're using our services, what's more important, what's the next thing that we need to deploy and make available in terms of capabilities. And that allows us to enable capabilities like sustainable cloud data centers and what you saw with HSBC in terms of allowing you insights to things like your carbon emissions so you can set goals. That's again part of the responsibility and part of the partnership that gives common benefit to us all.
So when Fidelity was starting our FinOps team, we went and met with the executive financial team. And I will say that there was a question that came from everyone. They were all very skeptical about why would cloud service providers help us manage and reduce our costs in the environment. And so really quickly on this one, I'd love to hear from each of you on why it is that you're invested in FinOps. And so Mich, let's start with you.
Yeah, no, I think Fred, touched upon it earlier, right? It's this virtuous cycle of reinvestment. We want to make sure that we're getting the right dollar from the customer. We don't want dollars from mistakes. We don't want dollars from misconfiguration. So education, understanding the services, understanding what type of capabilities, commitments that you can apply to your cloud usage, super important to making sure that you're getting the most value out of the cloud. Because every dollar that you save, every dollar that our customer saves, is an opportunity for reinvestment, whether it's in the business, whether it's in innovation, and that moves our industry forward, and that's what we want to see, because that creates growth for all of us.
Sure, I'll go next. Your question is interesting because it's why would we be motivated to build these tools? And I think one thing that's not always obvious is that each of us are also consumers in our own clouds. At least at Oracle, and I'm sure you also have this kind of philosophy, we tend to build one set of tools that we use for ourselves and that we also expose to customers. And like many of you, we're in a huge cost reduction drive right now of our own use of our own infrastructure. So that's really one of our big motivations as well, is how can we get our own house clean and how can we extend that tooling to customers so that we can all win?
I'm going to echo some of the things that we mentioned. If you're being dragged down with low benefit workloads, that is just not beneficial to your business. It's not beneficial to our business. And there really is a firm belief through my personal experience. I'm hearing it from the panel here as well, that every dollar saved is a dollar that's reinvested into the cloud. That's something from looking at our own data. That's something we have seen to be 100% true. And that's something that we think is the right thing. We're both our first and best customer. But we want to make sure that we're empowering, the FinOps organizations and the companies represented here to really make the most out of every dollar that they spend.
So over the last year or so, we have seen the economy, we have seen customers kind of shift about how they're pursuing cloud and also how they're responding to economic pressures. And so what I'd really like to understand is how have you responded to these economic pressures that your customers are starting to feel, and how are you supporting them? So Phil, let's start with you.
Sure. So I think what I've seen the most is a few years ago, customers just wanted to get into the cloud no matter what. And they didn't really know what that meant, but they knew that it was important. And what followed that was an explosion of cost, like you've all seen and we've been talking about. And given economic conditions and also given more maturity in enterprise and in technology in general, I'm seeing customers move more towards being a lot more intentional about how they move to the cloud. And by intentional, I mean choice of workload, I mean choice of cloud platform, choice to stay behind on premises sometimes, if that's what's important to them. So I think that a lot of the conversations that I've been in and what I've been seeing mostly is a lot more focused conversation around what is really the right thing for my business and how can I actually make the best of cloud technology and get its benefits while still keeping costs under control.
Great. And what about Google?
No, absolutely. And I love the fact that you brought up intentionality, because that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing customers more focused on what's going to drive top line revenue, what are the most important projects for their business, being very intentional about how they bring that to cloud, when they bring that to cloud, what it means to be transforming digitally. And some of the sort of support mechanisms we put in place have been doing workshops around cost optimization, looking at account reviews. When we have customers who are first and new to cloud, it's really about education, giving them understanding of the tools that already exist that they could use to help them be aware of their cost, including setting budget alerts and all of those things. So really it's about education, just making sure that people are aware of the tools, that they understand around what a digital transformation looks like, what benefits they have in the cloud, and how to use them to drive efficiency and value for their business.
Well, that is a perfect way to segue to talk with you, Fred, about what do you think the role of education and enablement is to accelerate transformation?
You know, maybe a good way to think about that and share some thoughts there is to think about Microsoft's journey, and specifically Microsoft Commerce's Teams journey. And we kind of started, you know, as many of you have started, which is, you know, we had traditional workloads. They're incredibly expensive. The first thing, you know, we engage with FinOps, and the conversation becomes like, how can we reduce cost? The answer is, let's move to the cloud. It's absolutely the best thing to do. We're going to reduce cost. What do? We take our traditional workloads, we lift and shift them into VMs, and we feel good about it, right? The engineering teams are like, fantastic, this is a great move. You know, next thing you know, FinOps teams are coming back and like, you know, we're not really seeing the cost savings that we were expecting. This doesn't really feel like the promise of the cloud. And, you know, here comes the learnings, right? The cultural shift begins to happen, and this is really an interaction and interplay between FinOps and the service teams, where FinOps is kind of saying, listen, is this really the best we could do? We took this traditional on-prem thing, we've moved it to these VMs. Is this really the promise of the cloud? Can you do better? Let's set some targets. And really, that engagement has driven that cultural shift where we've taken those VMs and now we're thinking about more native workloads. And this is a process that's taking years. We've got many workloads, we have to make that transition. But we're now in this place where by moving our workloads into kind of native Azure, we're really beginning to see the savings. We're really beginning to see that promise. And it's really been a symbiotic relationship between FinOps, who's been driving the goals, driving down the budgets, and our engineering teams that are becoming more budget aware. They're using tools like cost management. They're engaging with the FinOps folks responsible for FinOps. We have our FinOps person here today, for example, who's engaged, and she's driving a lot of the budget conversations within our organization. So, you know, the learning for us is this is a big cultural shift. I've heard that word culture mentioned a couple of times in some of the conversations last night as well. Culture is a big part of the FinOps Foundation and kind of what it means to introduce FinOps into any large organization.
So talking about that continued cultural shift, we heard it today from Natalie at HSBC, we heard it from Equifax, we heard it from Walmart, right, about these organizations have very mature FinOps practices now. So talk to me about what type of behaviors you're seeing from your mature customers and what they're requiring from you. Let's go ahead, Mich, why don't you talk?
No, absolutely. And what we're seeing in terms of common themes among our large and digital native customers is deeper engagement with FinOps. We're seeing folks set KPIs all the way at the developer level. We're seeing folks integrate with our very granular cost data to give daily insights and projections, and taking that into design and planning discussions to influence how services are being built. And I think this trend will only accelerate with the advent of focus, with the advent of what we're seeing in generative AI. I think it's going to be an exciting time, and it's going to elevate the practice of FinOps within the broader community as well.
Phil, love to hear your insight.
Sure. I'll build, or I'll kind of go a little bit of a different angle than you've gone on this one. So I've also seen the increase in maturity generally in FinOps practices. But the thing that I've noticed the most in the customer base over the last, let's say, 3 years is the language that we use and kind of how FinOps has given us, has allowed us to communicate with fewer words. And the example I'll provide is 3 years ago, people would say, Phil, I want to talk about billing. And I would have these customer billing meetings. And I wouldn't really know what they wanted to talk about. And kind of over time that evolved to, I want to talk about optimization. And in the last year and a half or 2 years, I've had customers that say, I want to talk about FinOps. And then I know the framework that they want to talk about. It's really easy to formalize the conversation. I think I'll kind of pitch Focus again, right? Focus will make it even easier for us to wrap our arms around a common understanding of FinOps. But in terms of kind of those trends and kind of maturing of customers, I feel like language and kind of a common approach across the industry has been really interesting, and I've seen that evolve over the years.
I love that, actually, to think about communicating in a much more both collaborative and efficient type of way, right? And I think that's what we are doing with the framework here and why we practice it as practitioners. So Fred, tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing from those mature FinOps customers.
I think we're seeing, again, I explained kind of the journey that we're seeing within Microsoft. And as I talk and engage with some of the largest customers that have that mature practice, they've effectively they're making that cultural shift, they're making that cultural jump. We're seeing the interaction between the FinOps organization and the engineering organization, and those two teams are really playing off of each other. And this is a big shift where, again, where we think about, engineering has typically been siloed, financials has typically been siloed, and this is really now a partnership to drive the business efficiency and the business outcome. And so it's fantastic to see that kind of happening with our bigger companies.
Well, we're getting toward the end of our time, so this is our last question. We've got a minute for each of you to respond to it. Where do you see cost management and billing evolving?
Oh my goodness.
Fred, do you want to start?
Yeah, so this is a 2-hour conversation, and we'll try and summarize it really quick. We see this in 4 pillars, all right? And the 4 pillars, really starts with, the traditional pieces, analysis and insights. Think of this as billing, invoicing, the cost management aspects. These are the kind of tools that you're familiar with. We see, the evolution of things like machine learning, giving you deeper insights in those areas. But where things start getting really interesting is when we start looking at optimization and kind of really moving up the value chain. And again, thinking about optimization today, things like recommendation for Microsoft is things like Microsoft Advisor, which gives you recommendations to think about reserved instances, savings plans, those kinds of things. But large language models and things like ChatGPT really introduce kind of an ability for us to innovate here in really interesting ways that I think will have profound impact on the industry and in FinOps. And then the final step of the journey is really what I call the what if or the simulation part. And think of this as, wouldn't it be fantastic as FinOps practitioners if you can actually ask the system, like, what if? What if I move this workload to the cloud? What if I reshape this workload in the following way? What if I get into the following business? What do I need to do, and what's my cost profile going to be? So I'm going to hold it there. This really is a 2-hour conversation minimum, but I want to give you guys some time.
Phil?
Sure. I'll go next. Kind of maybe building on, again, a bit of a different angle. I feel like one of the themes that we've seen that I think will continue is that a lot of the more tedious work, like tagging of resources, will become simpler. And FinOps practitioners will be able to spend more of their time kind of higher up on the value chain, working on projects that are really relevant to cost reduction. And a lot of the easier stuff, like cost visibility and labeling, will become easier. Just a week and a half ago, I was chatting with my EVP around things like, we already know which computers talk to each other. We know which users are using which resources. We know how things work together, so can we get smarter about how we do simple things like tagging, so we can just give a lot more time back to FinOps practitioners? And I think that's where we're going to be going in the next few years.
And Mich, why don't you close us out?
Absolutely. I love the word smart because I think that's what we're headed to, sort of shifting left with smart tools and capabilities to help drive value from our role within the organization. So things like smart recommendations powered by AI, things like being able to have auto identification of workloads, the what if scenario around what if and what is my budget, what is an opportunity. I think we're going to have sort of an assistant that comes out. I look back on the evolution of this. We were in that VM era that Fred talked about. Then we went to the cloud infrastructure era. Now we're in the AI transformation era. And I think it's going to be such a huge benefit to all of us in all of our roles. And it's super exciting.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for participating in this. I hope you guys all found it as exciting as I did, and especially where it's going to go in the future for us. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Mich, thank you so much. Phil, Fred, pleasure. Thank you, Jen. That was amazing. All right, so cool to see these people coming together, obsessing over how to make the billing data easier for their customers and taking a quick bias for action for making some changes. So really great to see. Lovely moment, I just realized I'm out here without a clicker. So AV team, please advance for me. Thank you. Oh, I was forgetting something. So we're going to double click next into one of the hardest challenges, and really the challenge that I think we all struggle with around FinOps. Once we get the data out there, like we've talked about, then we need to start getting engineering teams engaging with it in ways that are integrated into their workflows and that can actually drive decision making and make choices about their infrastructure. When Mike and I started working on the revamp to the first book, the Cloud FinOps book, and let me tell you, after you work on a book for like a year, you really don't want to look at it for about 2 or 3 years, so I hadn't opened it up at all. And when we came back and started reading through it to review in early 2022 for the latest edition, there was a really clear theme that was pervading, which was this us versus them mentality between sort of FinOps teams and engineers. It was like, us FinOps folks, we're going to go get those engineers to do their job and take action. And it really, I think, showed, and unfortunately some of that pervaded into some of the perceptions of what FinOps was for a few years, that it's had to shift from being something off to the side to being a core part of the engineering practice. So we're not chasing engineers to be turning things off. We're actually sitting down at the point where we're defining product requirements to talk about the cost constraints so they can build toward those over time. So the last State of FinOps survey, thankfully, shows now that the FinOps practice is sitting in the CTO or CIO organization, almost overwhelming majority of this. So our next speaker has been in the trenches of engineering enablement, first at Fannie Mae, then at Capital One for a number of years, and now at JP Morgan Chase. Please welcome to the stage, Biba Helou. Hello, welcome. So, Biba, you have been through all these amazing companies, and I know you built some very famous, popular tooling while you're at Capital One. Can you tell us about your own career journey with working with engineers in cloud?
Sure. I've always been in infrastructure for most of my career, and then I've also spent some time in lines of business managing software engineering teams. And a big part of my job at my previous employer prior to JP Morgan Chase was developing cloud strategy, getting to the cloud, adopting cloud, and now in a very similar role at JP Morgan Chase.
And which piece of software did you work on at Capital One?
Cloud Custodian came out of our organization.
Very cool to hear that. So across all of this, like, what have you seen? We all talk about getting engineers engaged, excited, plugged into the cost practice. How have you seen that work best?
Engineers, in my opinion, and just knowing my past too, have always wanted to know the impact that they're making on the bottom line, on the business, on delivery. And I think FinOps is a way to get them to really understand context and make decisions and feel like they're part of a solution, as opposed to receiving requirements to, just lower your costs, lower your costs. They always say, just tell me what my budget is and let me know what trade-offs, give me the power to make the trade-offs.
Yep.
And with this practice, with the information that they get, they have a lot more control, and I think they get excited about it.
I think that's really cool. It's introducing cost as an early constraint so that they can make decisions, right? And not selling you need to do it in this way, but fit within this area and then make the innovative choices you think are right for the business and for the software.
Yeah, and I think not just focusing on optimization. Of course, efficiency and optimization is important everywhere. Everybody understands that. But it's about trade-offs. It's about being able to make a decision to spend more because something is really important and it's worth spending more, and where to spend less, for example, and maybe get some money to hire another engineer. So it gives them that flexibility, that ability to be more part of the decision-making process.
So earlier, Scott mentioned incentives, and he did actually get into, bonus structures and promotions and things like that. What tactical, tangible things have you seen as good incentivization, or things that disincentivize someone in that practice?
Yeah, I think you disincentivize, I'll start with that first and then end on the positive note. I think like disincentivizing is just making it about you have to save money, you have to squeeze, you're spending too much, you're being inefficient, and making optimization exercises, the thing to do periodically, because that sucks the energy out of the teams, essentially. If you're just making it about big optimization, mandates, and you have to stand up a big program just to do that. I think to incentivize, you make it fun. It's kind of, you have leaderboards, you highlight the achievements, you highlight the optimization techniques, you highlight the ideas that come out of the engineering teams. They're the ones that have the great ideas about how to cut down the costs. It's not just a formula that they need to follow. They often have better ideas than anybody else in the organization on how to cut the costs.
I love that. I heard earlier being bold with the ideas, and I think highlighting and providing that platform, right, as well, to share that and to make them, as we heard earlier as well, like giving them the credit, right, for those ideas and showing that. So stepping back a bit, how have you seen the role of engineering shift in a world where you're mostly in cloud? What are the big changes?
It's just a more holistic responsibility. They understand more the business context. They understand more the business value. They understand the impact to the end customer, I think, as they're taking on the responsibility for really understanding the cost of the business process, the business transaction. So it's learning a little bit about finance for engineering. It's learning about technology for the finance teams. It's learning about the technology for the business side too. So roles are shifting. More of a decision-making authority, maybe, I would say, kind of comes into it a little bit, because they have the information to have a little more authority in making decisions about what to spend on too.
So we heard earlier the cloud folks talking about the shared accountability model, and there's always a lot of discussion around where cost controls sit in the organization, how they're empowered, how they're enabled. The big question that always comes up is the centralized, decentralized conversation of, do you have a central team? If so, what do they do? What is the RACI attached to that? How much, what is your ideal, as you've seen through these multiple companies, the RACI of cost management between the FinOps teams, engineering teams, the finance teams, et cetera?
My opinion, just based on experience and all of the things that I've seen, is it's good to have a cross-functional central team that helps develop the standards, develop the reporting, develop the data models, for example, keeps up to date on the practices, on the optimization techniques. The cloud is changing constantly. There's so much innovation. It's hard to ask every team to constantly be looking at what's the latest thing that will save me money. So a central practice, central education, central, recommendations, providing the tooling, providing the utilities for the teams to work with, I think is the method that works best based on my experience. But you never take away that there's always, the accountability ultimately for making the decisions is always within the business lines and the engineering teams, and the product managers. So it's not a one or the other, I don't think. I think there's just a very strong case for having a central practice and development team, I would say, for creating the utilities and making sure the reporting is there. And then I think the lines of business use that.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like getting them the data they need, right, to make the decisions in the context they have. I loved Tim was referencing the idea of getting daily spend in them and making it something that was bite-sizable and actionable that they could tackle. So take that to the other end of the data. What have you seen work in terms of integrating the cost data? Think about, say, unit economics or that concept, other business metrics, other values. How have you provided context for your engineering team so that they understand more than just the bill is going up, but what does that mean to the larger business?
Yeah, I think you have to break it down to a little bit more than just the bill is going up. It's the bill is going up for these things. And then they need to be able to understand and work with their business partners, their product partners on what's the value of the things that are driving up the bill. For example, when you go to the cloud, you have infinite capacity for holding data. And so automatically everybody's like, our data costs are going up. But you have so much more data. You were always constrained before. So you really need to take it to the next level and say, what's the business value of that data? Are we actually using it? So part of the information that you give is not just the cost, but are you using the thing that you think you're using?
Yeah.
And that helps them make the decisions.
Well, to push you a little bit, I know you can't share specifics, but when we talk about unit economics, often the examples that come up are the cloud native companies, and it's an Uber-style cost per ride. What does that look like at a JP Morgan Chase? Maybe take off the public-facing websites. What sort of metrics might you give to engineers?
Yeah, I'm not going to say specifically for JP Morgan, just generally speaking, right? You can have all sorts of flavors, and it depends on the state of maturity that you're in for your organization. So unit cost can be simply unit cost of a petabyte of storage or compute or what have you, and sometimes it's good to start there, and that's enough for a little while. Other unit costs are cost per transaction or cost per, customer or cost per business process. So I think you have to tailor it to where your company is from a maturity perspective and what resonates with the business.
Yes.
Yep.
There is an empathy, a people understanding, an influencing, aspect to that. And where have you seen the most impact from all of that? Where have you seen the impact of putting that data in front of them? What is the impact of the FinOps practice as you've rolled it out?
For what I've seen is just the engagement level of the teams working with each other, the finance teams, the business teams, and the engineering teams, and really trying to be creative about driving down the costs ultimately for the end customer of the company or the organization. So you just see a little bit of a difference in the conversation and the way they interact with each other and the way that they work with each other that I just think creates momentum and a very positive vibe, for lack of a better term, within the company about really wanting to do the right things for the organization and the customer.
The vibe, this whole soft side of FinOps, I feel like we talk a bit about it, but there really is a winning hearts and minds and an evangelizing in the organization and making people excited, right, to get involved in it.
Exactly.
So, you mentioned working with the various teams. Let's talk a little bit about education.
Sure.
So JP Morgan Chase has, I think, 205 FinOps certified practitioners now.
Yep.
It's one of the most certified FinOps certified practitioner organizations in the world. What do you see the role of education in this, and how have you leaned into getting those initiatives rolling?
So we have someone here, Bella Kemery, who's going to be speaking tomorrow, I believe, but she has set up a program. It is about not just teaching people the techniques and the practice, but getting them excited about it, right? So really creating a space where different personas can learn what they need to know about FinOps practice. It's not a one-size-fits-all for everyone, I think, and I think that's important to understand for everybody. But it's also about generating the excitement and then getting the feedback from the practitioners and then continuing to build that into the education process. And I think it makes the teams working on the products really excited to know that they're learning a lot of the same things that the executives are learning or the management teams are learning too, and that way they're all speaking the same language.
So you're fairly new where you are now,
I am.
But this is not your first rodeo.
It is not.
JPMC, or rather Capital One, is known in this space for having a very advanced FinOps practice, a lot of tooling. So you had a lot of expertise you were bringing over. One of the things I'm always interested about is that it seems like you can take a FinOps practitioner and drop them into a new company, you can get a head start, but it doesn't mean you can suddenly change the culture. What challenges and what advice would you give to people who are starting a practice in a new organization about where to begin so they can ultimately get in the right path to get to that run stage again?
I think it's very similar to what I've heard everybody preceding me on this stage saying and what I've heard you say before too, right? It's really important to have the data for people to work with. be meaningful to them, right? So meaningful data. So I think it's good to just set that up. And it's also good to start talking about and evangelizing the practice before you mandate practices. I think that's always a really important thing is don't make it a mandate, make it a, hey, this is a value add to the way that you're working. So I think you start with education in parallel with making sure that you've got all of the information and the utilities that you need for people to do their job. And it doesn't mean wait to be perfect. That's another thing. Like I think a lot of times organizations make a mistake of, I have to build in this process and it has to be perfect and robust before I'll roll anything out. Start, take the feedback. Not everything works for every company. And so you just need to slowly introduce it. And then one other big thing is celebrate the successes, the incremental success, before you move on to adding more and more into the practice.
So last question, one of the phrases you said when we caught up a few weeks ago that I would love you to expand upon was rules before tools.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So that always goes back to, you don't want to disincentivize teams that have an accountability for implementing a practice or implementing anything, honestly. If you tell them to do something, but you're not giving them the tools, the information, the education. You're just saying, go and do this, go read about it and do it. It disincentivizes people. So I think it's always a good idea to spend the time to make sure that you have that foundational setup for teams to be able to do their job before you mandate that they do their job.
That's the reason that we have all this and we lead in this community is you've got to get that culture change and those things in place. Tools are great, but they don't necessarily do the job on their own.
Exactly.
So speaking of teams, we talked a lot about teams. Unless you're at a tiny company and only one cloud, little spend, you really need to get everybody together. And you can't really be a superhero who does FinOps on their own. So are you a Ted Lasso fan?
I am.
Ted Lasso fans? Anybody? Woo, okay. I've been thinking about FinOps lately as remember Total Football? It's like everybody plays together, everybody shares the credit, there's no individual. And I think we've seen JP Chase has been involved in the foundation for a long time, really play what we're calling Total FinOps. So I actually wanted to bring out some of your team to the stage here. If we can bring out Andrew and Beth. So Andrew Fegg is on our governing board, and Beth Markey is a key part of the team who's driving FinOps throughout the organization. They were some of the first members of the FinOps Foundation's enterprise program, and I wanted to share they're the first enterprise to achieve the brand new, look at that new badge, the FinOps Certified Enterprise. So this is based on an assessment that covers a large part of the practice. Information's available on the website if you want to find out about it. They've done amazing work. They're also the most certified FinOps enterprise in the world, over 200 certifications, been contributing heavily to the community, and we're very excited to announce that JP Chase is the 2023 FinOps Outstanding Team of the Year.
Yay.
Thank you so much. I wanted to say a huge thank you to the folks that you're seeing all throughout the organization today. You're going to run into them over the next couple of days. It's the members that you see from JP Chase that are making the difference. They are the culture carriers that make the difference for our teams every day. So thank you for them.
And just real quick, so JR, I want to say a real big thank you to you and everybody at the foundation. You've been awesome, awesome partners, and I'm looking forward to the next year. And JP Morgan's not done talking yet, so Beth and I are going to do a session tomorrow at 11, and Abella and Carol are going to do a session at 3:35, so please don't miss us. And thanks again for recognizing this award.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Great. Well, so at this point, we're almost done. I know everybody's probably ready for their bio breaks and coffee and all the things. I wanted to bring out a super important and special guest to me, Many years ago, I sat down in this person's office in Sydney and on his couch, and he told me how everything I thought about most of cloud was wrong and how I was totally wrong about how commitments work, completely reset my thinking. This person has been long-term thought partner for me and has been turned into a dear friend. As I mentioned, someone I really got to know at conferences like this. So we'd like to welcome out to the stage my co-author and the CTO at the FinOps Foundation, Mike Fuller. Hey, man.
Hey, dude.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Are you jet lagged?
No, I'm good.
You're doing good.
This is amazing. It's like awesome to see this, how big this is now. Like, awesome, all the people here. And I guess as a practitioner at heart, I'm just watched the whole show today and how awesome it is. I guess watching it from behind the scenes, but imagining myself in the front, in the front of the stage here and watching it from the front. So. It's been awesome.
So Mike spent a lot of years running the FinOps practice at Atlassian and learned a lot with him through that process. But one of the things interesting, and now in your role as CTO, you don't have a big engineering team. So what do you see your role as now?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of funny to come into it with only sort of two developers and call yourself a CTO. But I don't really think about day-to-day about enabling my engineers inside of the foundation itself, but how do I enable your engineers at your organizations? And so what is it that we're doing in the resources that we're putting out and the tools that we're trying to provide you, guidance that we're sort of laying out in front of you to make sure that your practices are able to enable your engineers. And so you are my customer, effectively.
So let's talk about a couple of the themes just to wrap up today. The first one I think that's coming out is that FinOps has now become a boardroom concern for a lot of organizations. What have you seen change in that area?
Yeah, I think that, if I pick up some of the things that were discussed throughout the event today, you've got Mich from Google talking about getting the right dollar from the customer, and exec levels do want to make sure they're putting their right dollar in the right place, and then we saw Fred from Microsoft talking about getting the dollar and putting it in the right investment areas, and that a dollar saved is a dollar reinvested somewhere in the organization. And so I think there's definitely the higher levels in the business are looking at how do they make sure that that's happening within their org, and so FinOps is just there in a good position to be able to support that for the organization.
Absolutely. The other one that felt like it came out a lot was this aspect of moving from FinOps as an individual persona, the total FinOps, I am coining that for the Ted Lasso fans, into being really a team sport. What do you see in there?
Yeah, I mean, even if I just reflect on my own experience, FinOps was sort of driven by myself inside the organization, but it was the team that was around me, both directly.
Some of them are here, right?
Team.
You've got Sarah from Atlassian and Dina, yeah.
And so the ones that are directly in my own team, in the FinOps team, but it's the whole company, all the personas in interacting together and working as one really is what drives this forward and gets that culture happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. So the next one that I feel like is, you coined this term, I got to give you credit, but the idea that we need to start putting the right data into the path of the engineers. And let's talk about where that has started historically and what we're seeing now.
Yeah, I just felt like, in my experience, that we were basically forcing the engineers to go to the data. And it means that it added a lot of effort into their normal workflow, and it also separated the data from their normal day-to-day. And we heard from Tim from Walmart talking about how they were driving that, getting the attention of the engineer on the daily spend. And just as long as they maintain that daily spend and they're thinking about it as the part of their role, they were able to then move forward with making good decisions on cloud. And so the idea is to then transition the right key elements of the FinOps data. So whether it's daily spend, whether it's how you're trending towards forecast, or the top opportunities you have for efficiency, and just moving that into their normal path. Engineers really do have a desired path through the organization. They have their own dashboards, their own meetings, their operational readiness reviews, and so you're just trying to figure out how do we get the right information and put it in those places so that it becomes part of their normal day-to-day conversation.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of this, is we want to just make it part of the job as they go. So the last thing we want to talk about is the way that FinOps as a concept has shifted left to being a part of engineering in particular. What have you seen there?
Yeah, so I feel like if you sort of go over time, there's a lot of these conversations where you have the normal engineering, and then every now and again they sort of go to the side and do that FinOps thing. And it really just treats FinOps like it's oil and water. And what we're trying to do is like shake that up, mix it together. You shouldn't be able to see the difference between doing good engineering and good engineering with FinOps. It should just be part of the day-to-day, and sort of brings that, cost is just another metric for engineering.
Yeah, it's a way to also, I think, encourage more innovation. Gabe Hegg is here. He's at NVIDIA now. He was at Apple last year. He did a great talk where he talked about financial constraints as being something that can give engineers more room to come up with more innovative solutions. Because if you are more cost constrained, sometimes you actually have to be more innovative than if you have the ability to spend whatever you want on any service.
Yeah, and I find like that balance between not every one of your cloud services needs to be the Ferrari or the Bugatti. You can pick all of the cloud options and spend up all the money. Of course, it's going to be the most performant thing, the most reliable thing across the world. But you want to try and figure out which of your services are your Ferraris and which of them are the Toyota Camrys, and you're like wanting to get that efficiency. And so, allowing engineers with the constraint to show where we want to be considered and cost controlled, and where we really need to be investing our money heavily in, and just making that balance.
And there's not really a right answer there either, right? Because the key is, I think, collaborating with the teams to make sure everyone's on the same page, that whether this application is a Ferrari or this one is a Yugo, and making sure there's alignment around that. And you may have a mix of those.
Yeah, so I think like if it's unclear to the engineers about what areas and what parts of your service infrastructure is the most critical, every engineer, even as a self-managing services in my previous role, everyone cares about their own services critically, and they think about wanting that to be the best thing that you can do. And so just allowing the business to give that input and show where you want to be considered with your costs and where you really want to be investing in heavy.
Amen. Well, we are near the end of the keynotes. I'm sure you've all been sitting here very peacefully and quietly. Thank you. I want to remind you, this is a people business. And we are all people here at a conference. And this is a conference about you as individuals progressing. You are the secret ingredient of FinOps. I've been so fortunate to find folks like Mike, folks like Steve Trask and Stacy Case and Ashley Ramatko and Kevin Imami and all of our leadership team here at the FinOps Foundation who we work closely with. I encourage you to go out there and find your people here and share ideas. Be bold, as they said earlier. Enjoy your conference. And 3 things. Please do check out the sessions. When I go to big conferences, I usually don't go to sessions anymore. I'm like, I want to go talk to people. There's amazing content. People have spent hours. I've seen most of them. They're great. Second thing is, definitely please connect. Find the people, scan their badges, all those things. And remember, we're all here to grow and have fun together. So we have a quick break, about 17 minutes. We need to get you out of here, and you're going to get to the breakouts, get some coffee, and we will see you for the rest of FinOps X. Enjoy.
Thanks, everyone.
It is Wednesday afternoon here in San Diego, and we are just wrapping up the day 1 of the conference. This morning in the keynotes, I was blown away by the speakers and the content. We had Walmart sharing how they're managing FinOps data at massive scale in the Fortune 1. We had HSBC talking about this mature FinOps practice that's been going for years, only gets more complex, and how they're integrating the full stack of infrastructure costs into the practice and bringing in sustainability data as part of it. We welcomed on stage both CTO and a CFO from Equifax, 2 sides of the coin, talking about the challenges of marrying the financial constraints and the technology needs of the business, and heard some great stories from them about how to foster the practice. In the end, we had a panel of VPs of cloud billing responsible for the billing systems who shared how they have a shared accountability model with their customers for making cloud spend valuable. And the big news of the conference and the most buzz came from the Focus Open Billing Data Project announcement. Udam Dewaraja, our chairperson, announced the version 0.5 of Focus and shared a bit about the roadmap that we have coming to roll this out with cloud-specific releases through the end of the year. Now we are heading out into the community, and the thing that's been so amazing last night at the welcome reception was just the energy of people. Here at this conference, everybody is doing the same work. You're not alone when you're here. You can connect with peers, with colleagues, with future bosses, with future team members. maybe even make some friends. We hope that you come next year to FinOps X here in San Diego. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.